authentic and natural English.
We only study grammar so we can forget about it. But how is it that that makes sense? Hello everybody, my name is Teacher Leo and today we're talking about grammar. Kind of the first step, the first layer of foundation that we need to study when we're thinking about building our grammar skills. Now, when we think about grammar in particular, we have a lot of people that will have different opinions on it. For example, the idea that you don't have to study grammar or you should, like the fact that you should never study grammar at all would be something that should not really cross your mind. There is a point of grammar that it's important for us to know. However, if you remember some of the videos that I have posted before, we have talked about the idea of thinking in another language, in that while we are processing information in our brains and we kind of hear our voice or our inner speech, in that particular case, we can train our brains to use different languages as we want, for example. So if, let's say, for example, you're going to an English-speaking country, but you don't necessarily think that you're going to live there, we would not want to get a job there or anything like that, then you don't necessarily need to develop these skills, even though when we are building authentic connections with people, it can be really helpful. But if you're thinking about going to an English-speaking country and you're thinking about going to college or thinking about getting a job, the idea that we'll be able to think in our first language and then produce things in English, it's really going to work at our disadvantage because we're always going to be doing 2 times the work or the cognitive load that we would have than if we were just to use one language while we do everything. Now, when we talk about thinking in English, there's a lot of the ideas behind being able to identify and reproduce patterns, problem solve, all of these components. So how do we get these concepts of language and how is it that we think in another language and put it into kind of how is it that we should be studying grammar? So this is the lesson. If you've been wondering, if you've been thinking about, or if you wanted to see something that is different in terms of grammar, I have the lesson for you. Let's get started. So you don't have to read this. Don't read this. Just pay attention to what you see here. You have a bunch of words. You can notice that they are split. And I noticed that the split, they have some indentation to the left. So when I look at this type of construction, we are usually able to identify this and call this a text. And if you think about text as a group of something, we can think that a text is a group of, if you've been my student, you know this, just to repeat after me. So I'll give you a few seconds and then you repeat. And if you don't know, you'll see the answer right after. If you are rewatching this video, which you should always try to do, you will also be able to answer this before I even say the answer. But a text is a group of, a group of paragraphs. Now, when I look at paragraphs, I look at just one of those chunks that the first sentence is indented to the left, and I take a look at what I see there, and I think, well, a paragraph. A paragraph is a group of sentences. This is what I have here. Now, while we are thinking about our education, we're learning about the language that we speak, we usually think about a sentence as a group of words. But you see here that we have a little bit of a blank there between sentences and words. This means that for our purposes, when you're thinking about thinking in English, developing our fluency, we're going to add a step there, and we're going to think about sentences as a group of phrases and clauses. So these 2 words, they're going to be key here for us to be able to understand this concept and take a look and build sentences in English and think in English more naturally. We're thinking about clauses and we're thinking about phrases. Now, what is the definition of a phrase? I have some time here for you to think about it. What is the definition of a phrase? And then, what is the definition of a clause? I had some time to activate your inner speech to think about these definitions. So when I take a look here and I think about a clause, I'm going to be able to identify the subject and the verb. So when I see, another component, we will be repeating this quite a bit. Every time that we see a sentence, we're going to start the analysis by looking at the verb. So first we look at the verb and we identify whether this verb has a subject. When I see subject plus verb, that's what I call a clause. Now, a phrase is going to be a group of words that works as one unit of information. So you see that in this case, I do not have the presence of a subject or a verb. Let's take a look at this from the context of one particular sentence. So here I have, I drink a cup of coffee every day. I drink a cup of coffee every day. The verb that I have there, we're going to start the sentence analysis on the verb. The verb is drink. Now, if I look at the verb, I think, do I have a subject? Remember, for the English language, we have to take a look left of the verb, and that's usually how we're going to find the subject of that verb, because in English, we have the sequence subject, verb, object. Okay, so I drink. I drink is my clause. And then you see here that I have two different phrases. I have a cup of coffee and I have every day. So a cup of coffee, even though we have four kind of constructions or four, we wouldn't say that they are four words because is just the article, but we have four different units there that they're working together forming one. Those basically, they represent one idea, a cup of coffee. And then you have every day as the next phrase. So this is something that Latin Americans have to be mindful of, because the word phrase can sound like frase, but that's not what it means. So it's a false friend, as we would say in this particular case. A phrase is a group of words that works as a one unit of information, and a clause is the group of subject plus verb. Now, we're going to analyze these a little bit more in detail. In particular, now let's zoom in and take a look at different types of phrases. So we have different sentences here. For instance, the big dog barked loudly. She has been studying for her exams. He's an extremely talented musician. He ran quite quickly to catch the bus. The book is on the table. Kind of one of the most popular sentences in English that we have here. So in each one of these cases, we can think about some groups of words representing one unit of information. In this particular case, we are basically analyzing the type of words that we have. So, and we are going to give these different types of names for these phrases. So we have noun phrases, verb phrases, adjective phrases, adverb phrases, and prepositional phrases as well. So you see that each one of them, they represent one specific type of word. So if I see this unit, the big dog, so all of this, the big dog, is representing one idea. It's telling me about dog. What is it telling me about dog? Well, the tells me that this is singular, one, and it's specific. Big is an adjective and tells me about the size. So the big dog is the noun phrase. And here we're all using the other words to describe or to provide more information about the word dog, which is a noun. Therefore, a noun phrase. So same idea, we'll go to the next component here, verb phrases. We have more than one word that will be in a sentence that is expressing the idea of the verb in that case. She has been studying for her exams. Has been, those are two auxiliary verbs. Has is the auxiliary verb for perfect tenses. Been here is being used as an intersectional point between perfect and continuous, because been here is past participle, so has been, this is present perfect. Then we have been studying. We have the verb to be and the verb with ing, which basically represent the construction of continuous. So she, the part of has been studying, basically tells me that I have present perfect continuous. But these three words, they are representative of the verb unit in this sentence, therefore the verb phrase. So the same thing will keep on happening with adjective phrases, adverb phrases, and prepositional phrases as well. Specifically, we'll be able to identify a lot of prepositional phrases like on the table, through the park, beside your friend, because these are always going to be starting with a preposition and then followed by a noun or a pronoun, and then maybe we'll have an article out of that. So what's important for us to understand here is that we have these groups of words. They are usually positioned in a very specific location. For example, verb phrases, they're going to be after the subject, right? And then the last word here usually is going to be the main verb. Everything else is helping us build the idea of that verb, so on and so forth. Of course, the noun phrases, they could be after the verb as well. These positions are not locked in positions, and they're not going to be kind of the ultimate rule of where they can be. I could have the big dog and someone put it at the end of the sentence if the sentence was different. But in this particular case, just keep in mind that what we're thinking about is the fact that we have groups of words. But when I think about the ideas that they represent one unit of idea, of one unit of information here. And in this particular case, we're not thinking about clauses, we're thinking about phrases specifically. Okay, now clauses, as we remember, would be pretty much when we have subject plus verb. Now I have a part of subject plus verb plus phrases. Let's take a look at the types of sentences that I can build. So going back to our original sentence, I drink a cup of coffee every day. So in this particular case, I have one clause, I drink a cup of coffee every day. So in this particular case, we call this construction a simple sentence. So a simple sentence, it doesn't necessarily have any judgment in terms of how we are expressing this idea. Simple sentence doesn't mean that the idea is simplistic. It only means that I have one unit of subject plus verb and other phrases that go along with it. And that's it. Now, going into a second component of this, if I expand this sentence and I say, I drink a cup of coffee every day, but I didn't have one today. Okay, so in this particular case here, I have two units or combinations in subject plus verb. I have the first verb drink, and then I have the second one, the verb phrase didn't have, indicating to me that this is negative, simple past, but the main verb here is have. Both of these verbs, they have specific subject. We have I and I, so I have two clauses here. This clause is being put together by the word but. We're going to take a look at all the words that are very similar to but what we're going to call it. This means that this is a coordinating conjunction. So when I take a look at but is basically saying, hey, I'm here to coordinate this idea, to tell you how they interact with each other. For example, if I say I woke up and took a shower, and is giving me the idea of chronological sequence, giving me the idea of contrary, of opposition. So in this particular case here, the name that we give to this particular type of construction is a compound sentence. Two clauses connected by a coordinating conjunction. Now, another sentence that I have here is, I drink a cup of coffee every day because I need energy in the morning. So in this particular case, same idea here. I have two verbs, drink, need. Both of them have subjects, I drink, I need, so we have two clauses here. Okay, now these two clauses are now connected by the word because. Now, because is different from but. But says, hey, I have two sentences here, they are connected, but I don't have one depending on another. I'm adding an idea, I'm adding a relationship that they have together. I could very easily just separate those two ideas and make no connections, and that will be just fine. Now, because is a different type of word. Because is what we call a subordinating conjunction, which means that it's basically signaling to us, hey, this is expressing a particular idea, but it needs a main idea to go with it. This cannot be alone. Just imagine if I go to you and my first sentence for you in a conversation is, hi, because I need energy in the morning. That feels incomplete. People are going to maybe look at it as like, why? Who asked? What is this about? This is signaling to us basically the word because tells us, hey, whatever idea I have following this word, it's not the main clause. This is what we call a dependent clause. It depends on the main idea of the sentence being, I drink a cup of coffee every day, because it's signaling to us reason. Okay, so when I have two sentences and I'm connecting these two sentences using a word like because, which is a subordinating conjunction, it establishes that relationship of dependency on one another. So we have one main idea and one dependent idea, or a dependent clause. Okay, so you see they have two different kind of the words conjunction. We have coordinating and subordinating. We're going to take a look at these in a moment, but not before. We take a look at the final type of sentence that you can create in the English language, this one being more of a hybrid. So you have, I drink a cup of coffee every day, but today I didn't have one because I woke up feeling energized. So here we have, I drink, I didn't have, I woke up, but, and because. So we have three different clauses. We have one main clause, I drink a cup of coffee every day. Then we have an independent clause with I didn't have one today, and then a dependent clause with I woke up feeling energized. This is kind of the longest construction that we could have in this particular sense of building sentences, and the name of this type of sentence is compound complex. So we have four types of sentences in the English language: simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. Compound characterized by being connected using coordinating conjunctions, complex sentences with subordinating conjunctions. Now, is there a way to remember them more easily? Kind of. If we take a look at coordinating conjunctions, for sure, there's a very easy way for you to memorize these. You can just think about the word fanboys: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. So these conjunctions are all coordinating conjunctions, therefore they build compound sentences. Now, for subordinating conjunctions, you have a few options. The first one that you have, you can think about Webbits, the W being basically representing a lot of different WH words. We have A with after, B with before, because, if, though, and since. So you see that the second one, I saw a waboob, that one is also an acronym that you can try to memorize. Very similar. It does have like while in that one, but then, and we have although instead of though. Both of them are subordinating conjunctions, so you don't have to worry about them. So these are ways that you have to easily memorize kind of let's say the most popular, the highest frequency ones. What's important for you to keep in mind is that you see here that one of the subordinating conjunctions that we have is if. Now, if we want to express if plus not, like if in the negative, what's the word that we use? Unless. So if you thought about unless, yes, so if is a subordinating conjunction as much as unless is also a subordinating conjunction, but they are expressing kind of, we have if and then if plus not with unless. So this is kind of a starting kit of subordinating conjunctions. There are others, but this is a good way if you want to get started memorizing them a little bit more effectively. We're not focusing so much. I will create just one entire video only on correlative conjunctions, but it's just important for us to know that they exist and they're part of this group. So if you say as and as, she is as smart as she's competent, for example, either or, neither or either or, neither or. Not only, but also this one's the most popular ones of correlative conjunctions. We're not going to focus on them so much today. Just want to let you know that they exist, and I will be creating a video specifically about them in the future. Now, before we go into exercises, so being a fluent user who thinks in English, means that our brains process information in chunks, in groups, as opposed to word by word. When we are thinking on the word by word, this is basically, it's a characteristic of what we have of translated thought. When we're thinking in our language and we try to translate to English word by word. And we can use that in some situations. If you're just traveling, that will be totally fine. But if you're thinking about using day to day in college and work, this kind of code switch will make us slower and less effective. Now, I understand that a lot of my communication with you today is about the terminology, noun phrases, adverbial phrases, and sometimes that can make our brains kind of tangle a little bit. We don't feel good when we hear all this terminology. But keep in mind that terminology is something that helps me communicate to you what you are looking at. Our brains are not going to think about, oh, this is a beautiful adverbial phrase that I connected right there. It won't really think on the terms of the terminology, but it will think about the groups of words that are necessary for me to build that chunk effectively when it comes to grammar. So your brain will remember the group of words, not the terminology, but this doesn't mean that you shouldn't take a look at terminology. It's important for you to know exactly what is the pattern that you are looking at. So anyone who thinks, oh, you're just learning grammar because you have to forget it later, this is kind of a short-sighted point of view. It is important for us to pay attention to the chunks, to the patterns, so we can think in English and we can communicate more effectively. So let's practice. So a little bit of a recap: when we're analyzing a sentence, that's the step-by-step. Find the verb phrase. Does this verb have a subject? So if we have that, what is the clause? Are there any other phrases, any other verb phrases and subjects? We have other clauses there. If we only have one combination of subject plus verb, that's a simple sentence. If you have more than one clause, what words are being used to connect these sentences? And this will determine the type of sentence that we have. So focus on that. I have 4 sentences. Now, what type of sentences are these? So the first one is, all the flights have been canceled because of the bad weather. All the flights have been canceled because of the bad weather. Is this simple, compound, or complex? What do you think? Now, let's take a look at number 2. He had many faults, but he was a good man at heart. He had many faults, but he was a good man at heart. What type of sentence is this one? Simple, compound, or complex? Number 3. It has been ages since I saw you. It has been ages since I saw you. What is this one? This is a simple sentence, compound sentence, or complex sentence? And then sentence number 4. He finished his work and put away his books. He finished his work and put away his books. What type of sentence do we have here? Simple, compound, or complex? That's the first exercise, the first type of practice that we have for today. Now, the second one that we have a paragraph breakdown. So here, I'm going to read this paragraph. Darby's inquiries had brought her to the court in Lafayette. Of all the Supreme Court cases due to be heard in the next few months, there was one that could help explain the killings. She needed to see the court's files on the case. When the clerk brought them to her table, however, her heart sank. There were lots of files, each inches thick. The case was 7 years old. Only one person was involved, but he had hidden behind 38 different businesses, which had used no fewer than 15 law firms over the last 7 years. So this is the paragraph. So we know that this is a paragraph. We take a look at the amount of final stops or periods that we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7 sentences here. Now, when we take a look, that's the first question that we would have. Now, when we look at those sentences, what type of sentences do we have? Which sentence is the shortest? Which is the longest? What conjunctions were used? Now choose 3 sentences to rewrite as different sentence types. So if you have, for example, a complex sentence, can you write that complex sentence as a simple sentence? And if you don't, if that's a big question, don't you worry, because that's the topic of our next video, how to convert types of sentences from simple to compound to complex and vice versa. But you are going to see, if you want to take a look at the answers to these 2 exercises, you can join the practice club. It's very similar to a Patreon, but basically you have access to my online community. I'm going to provide the answers to these exercises, and once a week I'll also provide some expansions, some extra videos on this. So find the link in the description for our practice club, where you can see the answers and access some more extra different types of materials. And also, if you would like to join Second Nature English as one of the tools that we have to help students really develop this sense of grammar, the use of phrases and clauses, build them automatically as they learn grammar overall, we have 2 of the tools that I have created. We have the sentence builder, that basically clicking on those buttons, you're basically going to build a sentence. And then after that, we have a step-by-step, basically a guide of 8 steps that you follow to raise awareness on the sentence types that you have and how is it that you can convert sentences on the fly. This really helps with the idea of paraphrasing. Think about the multiple types of connections that we can make with words to form sentences. So if you would like to join, if you want to participate in the Think in English program, the next group of the Think in English program starts in June 1st, 2026. Enrollments are open, and you are able to also take a look at the link in the description. I will be sending you your Fluency kit. I'll be creating a page for you also, and we're going to be helping you really reach the fluency that you seek in the English language. Now, go ahead, read some texts, go read some books, take a look at a paragraph, analyze the types of sentence, try to practice intentional writings. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to journal today about something, so I'm going to use 3 compound sentences, I'm going to use these conjunctions. Remember that the process to learn to think in English, use phrases and clauses, in the beginning, yes, you might have to reinforce a little bit the names and the structures. And if you need help during this process, Think in English and Second Nature English are here to help. Thank you so much, everybody. My name is Teacher Leo, and I'll see you next time to talk about sentence conversions from simple, compound to complex. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.